Emergency response team, what's the situation?
We need an ambulance now. A trainer's been pulled under. The words sliced through the radio like a blade, sharp and urgent. But by the time the call echoed through Ocean World Orlando's emergency channel, the worst had already begun. Alina Moret had always believed the ocean spoke a language most couldn't hear. At 33, she dedicated over a decade to learning that language, not from textbooks, but from the eyes, the movements, the silent intelligence of the sea's most powerful predator, the orca. And with Vega, it was something else entirely. Vega was no ordinary orca, 19 feet long, over 4 tons of muscle and memory. Captured from Norway's frigid waters in 1992, Vega had spent most of her life circling a pool far smaller than the wild she once knew. But at Ocean World Orlando, she was a headliner, a miracle, a marketing machine in black and white. And to Alina, she was family. They first met in 2012. Alina, then a bright-eyed graduate in marine behaviorism, had just joined Ocean World's elite orca training program. Vega, already seasoned by years of shows, had a reputation for being unpredictable. She ignored cues, thrashed her flukes in protest. Trainers kept their distance, but Alina didn't. She lingered longer at the tank, watched without clipboard or whistle, sat cross-legged on concrete just to be still near her. In time, Vega responded, not with tricks, but curiosity. She began to mimic Alina's breathing from the other side of the glass. The first time Vega gently brought Alina a buoy, eyes locked, something shifted in the team. They were a pair now. Their routine, dance of trust, became a crowd favorite. Alina would dive into the pool, no harness, no backup, and Vega would rise beneath her, lifting her like a platform of living power. The crowd roared every time. Fearless, the brochures called her, but that wasn't the whole truth. Not everyone believed the bond was as unbreakable as it seemed. Vega's still a wild animal, one senior trainer had warned during a private staff meeting in 2019. She's not performing because she loves you. She's performing because we've trained her to, because she knows when she doesn't, things change. That trainer was reassigned to dolphins a week later. You see, Ocean World didn't like hesitation. It preferred certainty, clean narratives, posters of smiling trainers kissing apex predators. Not memos about Vega's increasingly erratic behavior, but those memos existed. They told of warning signs, Vega refusing to respond to hand signals during morning sessions, jaw popping, a known sign of irritation, during guest presentations, a minor lunging incident toward a junior staffer in 2020, chalked up to playfulness, and tail slaps, hard ones, enough to soak trainers standing 5 feet away. None of it made it to the press. Even Alina herself dismissed the warnings. "She's moody, that's all," she once said in an interview. "Like us. Some days she's playful. Some days she wants space. That's not danger. That's depth." Then came a moment in April 2023. During rehearsal, Vega broke from pattern, circled Alina 3 times underwater, then surfaced and swam to the far end of the tank. She wouldn't come back, wouldn't respond, wouldn't perform. Alina didn't scold her. She sat, waited, whispered into the water like a prayer. Vega returned 20 minutes later. It was framed as a heartwarming moment, a reminder of their spiritual bond. But for the few trainers watching in silence, it felt more like a warning, a pause before a storm. They didn't know it then, but that hesitation would mirror what would unfold weeks later, in front of a full stadium of spectators. When Vega once again broke the script. Only this time, she wouldn't come back gently. It was a Friday, hot, cloudless, the kind of Florida afternoon that stuck to your skin. At Ocean World Orlando, the heat only added to the buzz. Tourists flooded in, clutching maps and soda cups, dragging sunburned children toward the arena. At exactly 2:30 p.m., the gates to the Dances with Giants stadium opened. Within minutes, the stands were packed. Speakers blared upbeat music. Trainers stood by with forced smiles and earpieces. In the control booth, a stage manager called cues. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But below the surface, something had shifted. Alina Moret stood behind the curtain in her wetsuit, adjusting her earpiece. Her hair was still damp from warm-up dives. A fellow trainer clapped her shoulder. "You good?" Alina smiled. Always be with Vega. She wasn't lying. But she didn't mention the slight delay during rehearsal, how Vega had floated motionless for nearly a minute before obeying the retrieval signal, or the hesitation in her eye as she circled the pool's edge instead of approaching the platform. Alina brushed it off. Vega had moods. Everyone did. Music swelled. Alina dove in. The audience leaned forward in anticipation. Underwater, visibility was low, sunlight cutting through like shards. She floated in position, hand extended, the cue signal flashing. Nothing. Vega hovered 6 feet away. Watching, Alina repeated the gesture. Still, Vega didn't move. Not the usual speed, not the usual grace. Instead, she slowly approached, gliding like a shadow. Alina smiled. "There you go, girl," she whispered, bubbles escaping her lips. Then, a shift. A nudge, playful, almost teasing. Vega brushed past her, swirled around. The crowd laughed. Alina played along, waving at the audience, splashing water. But her gut tightened. On the second pass, Vega's head came faster, closer. Her eyes locked on Alina's. There was no third pass. With terrifying precision, Vega latched onto Alina's left arm and pulled her under. It was so fast the control booth missed it. So smooth the audience thought it was part of the choreography. But Alina knew. This wasn't the dance. This wasn't the plan. Below the surface, the world turned into a flurry of bubbles, thrashing and pain. Vega's grip tightened. Alina's lungs burned. Above, laughter turned into murmurs. Then confusion. Then silence. Backstage, a junior handler froze, staring at the tank. "Something's wrong," he muttered. It would take another 8 minutes before the stadium realized the truth. By then, the water was red. By then, it was too late. Backstage, a junior handler froze, staring at the tank. "Something's wrong," he muttered. It would take another 8 minutes before the stadium realized the truth. By then, the water was red. By then, it was too late. At first, she thought, "This is a mistake." Vega had dunked her before, playfully, gently. But this wasn't playful. This wasn't gentle. Above the pool, the audience was still clapping. To them, it was all part of the show. Another dazzling feat of animal coordination. Another trick. Children pointed. Cameras flashed. Then Vega breached. Alina surfaced for a moment. Her face was pale. Her mouth opened in a silent scream. Her eyes locked with someone in the stands. Maybe a staff member. Maybe a stranger. It didn't matter. It was a moment of naked terror. Real, human fear. Then she was gone again. Vega plunged, taking Alina with her. The splash was massive. And finally, the crowd knew. A few screams pierced the music. A mother dropped her popcorn. A father pulled his child closer. Something was wrong, very wrong. Backstage, red lights began to flash. Trainers sprinted toward the tank. Emergency protocols, rarely practiced, never used, were suddenly everything. Nets were thrown, poles extended, alarms blared. But none of it mattered. Vega was focused. She dragged Alina across the pool, her movements frantic, almost erratic. Alina struggled, arms flailing, legs kicking, bubbles shooting upward like flares. She punched, clawed, tried desperately to break Vega's hold. At 2:50 p.m., she surfaced again. gasping, coughing, her mouth open wide for air. Blood stained the water around her wetsuit. A senior trainer shouted from the edge, "Let her go, Vega! Let her go!" Vega turned, eyes wild, unreadable, and dove again. This time, deeper. Alina's body jerked as she was taken down, her silhouette vanishing into blue. Her lungs screamed. Her shoulder, likely dislocated, offered no resistance. She reached toward the surface, her hand grazing nothing. Inside the control booth, panic spread. One technician whispered, "Should we cut the music?" Another responded, "They'll hear her screaming." At 2:53, the water churned violently. Vega's tail breached the surface like a guillotine blade. Blood arced into the air, casting red droplets across the front rows. The illusion shattered. The audience was no longer watching a performance. They were watching a woman die. A security officer grabbed the loudspeaker. "Everyone remain calm. Please exit the arena in an orderly fashion." But no one moved. They were frozen. At 2:55, Vega rose once more, but she was alone. Alina's body floated near the edge of the tank, limp, face down. A handler dove in, pulling her toward the deck, water pouring from her nose and mouth. Her wetsuit was torn, her arm mangled, her chest was unmoving. Paramedics arrived seconds later. CPR began immediately. Chest compressions, oxygen, defibrillators. But those standing closest already knew. The spark that had once lit up the water was gone. Alina Moret, the woman who danced with giants, had been taken by the very creature she loved most. And as the pool finally stilled, one question echoed through every heart in that stadium. Why didn't anyone stop this before it was too late? Alina's body lay on the slick poolside deck, soaked, lifeless, surrounded by chaos. Paramedics worked in desperate rhythm. Compress, breathe, compress. But their urgency clashed with the stillness in her eyes. There was no pulse. Around them, a ring of trainers and staff formed, many crying, others frozen. One trainer dropped to her knees whispering, "No, no, please," over and over, as if repetition might undo reality. A senior handler stared at the water, fists clenched. "She trusted her," he muttered. "She trusted Vega." In the tank, Vega swam slow circles, her dorsal fin cutting the water like a blade. She was calm now. Too calm, as if nothing had happened. But something had. At 3:10 p.m., the lead paramedic stood. His gloves were wet, his expression grave. "She's gone," he said flatly. No one replied. Inside the park's operations center, phones rang off the hook. Internal Affairs was notified. The coroner was en route. Legal teams were already assembling. But at that moment, by the pool, the crisis wasn't a headline yet. It was just grief. A grief so dense, it settled into the bones. The team covered Alina's body with a gray emergency blanket. A trainer placed her ID badge gently on top. Someone else turned off the stage lights. The pool, once electric with spectacle, now shimmered under dimmed fluorescence. Quiet. Final. And in the observation room, a surveillance tech rewound the footage. Frame by frame, he watched the moment Vega's mouth closed around Alina's arm. And he whispered, to no one in particular. She didn't flinch, not even once. The next morning, the headlines began. Tragedy at Ocean World. Orca kills trainer during live show. Beloved trainer Alina Moret dead in front of crowd. Was this preventable? But for those inside Ocean World Orlando, the media frenzy was just background noise to a far more unsettling truth. They had seen it coming. Within 24 hours, OSHA agents arrived on site. They requested training records, Incident logs, behavioral charts, and internal safety memos going back a decade. What they found was damning. Buried beneath staged press kits and choreographed marketing videos were documented warnings. Dozens. 2016. Vega refused commands for 3 consecutive days. 2018. A near miss when she lunged at a handler during a feeding. 2020. Internal emails suggesting Vega should be rotated out of performances. But each time, the response was the same. Adjust the routine. Minimize public visibility. Do not escalate. It wasn't just Vega they were protecting. It was the brand. The truth was, Alina had reported some of it herself. But she'd always softened the language, reframed aggression as restlessness, disobedience as emotional nuance. She believed in Vega, so deeply that even when the Orca showed signs of strain, Alina saw personality, not warning. But others didn't, and they were silenced. In a closed-door staff meeting 3 days after the incident, one junior trainer spoke through tears. We all knew. We all felt it. Every one of us. Vega wasn't okay. Another added. We weren't just asking Vega to perform. We were asking her to pretend she wasn't angry and wasn't suffering. And Alina, she was the only one still listening. That sentiment would be repeated in the weeks to come at Alina's memorial service. Held beside the now drained Orca pool, her wetsuit was folded neatly on a table, a single white rose placed atop her clipboard. Colleagues, family, and former trainers gathered in silence. That same week, protests erupted outside the park gates. Activists held signs that read, "Captivity kills." She trusted the system failed her. Vega isn't the monster. We are. Petitions for the release of Vega and other performing orcas surged online. Hashtags like Justice for Alina and hashtag Free Vega trended globally. The story had stopped being about one woman and one whale. It had become a reckoning. But the most haunting image remained behind the glass walls of the tank. Vega, alone, without shows, without music, just endless circling, lap after lap, in a pool built for human entertainment. Her body, powerful and elegant, now seemed subdued. Her eyes, once full of spark, were vacant, listless. She hadn't performed since that day. She never would again. Some staff avoided her entirely. Others sat in silence, watching from afar. One trainer admitted, "She looks like she's waiting for someone who's never coming back." Investigators ruled Alina's death as a combination of blunt force trauma and drowning. But for those who knew her, the true cause went deeper. It wasn't Vega's jaws. It wasn't an accident. It was the weight of years of denial. The illusion that trust could override instinct, that captivity could ever be enough. In the weeks that followed, Ocean World quietly announced it would begin re-evaluating its marine mammal programs. Vega remained off exhibit. The public was told she was resting, but the damage had been done. And while headlines eventually faded, the image of Alina Moret rising on Vega's back, arms spread like wings, lingered in the minds of millions. Not as triumph, but as a question. How many more need to die before we listen? In the end, Alina's dream wasn't wrong. It was pure. She believed in connection, in the poetry between species. But no poetry can thrive in a prison, and no amount of choreography can disguise a cry for help. Wild hearts were never meant to live behind glass. And perhaps the greatest tragedy is that it took a life for us to finally see it. Alina Moret didn't die by accident. She died because society chose applause over accountability. She believed in connection, but we built a stage of silence where instincts were chained and warnings drowned beneath music. If this story moved you, like, share, and leave a comment below. Do you believe wild animals deserve to be free? Type yes or no in the comments. Your voice matters. Let her story mean something. Let it be the beginning of change.